My son-in-law told me I was embarrassing them and to stay in my lane. He said this to me in front of 195 guests right after I handed over $92,000 for his dream wedding. I am Denise Porter, 63 years old, and I have been fixing broken toilets and mopping floors at Lincoln Elementary for 25 years. To Brandon, I was the pathetic janitor who had somehow scraped together wedding money. What he did not know, while begging resort staff for honeymoon upgrades, he was talking to my employees about my property, the luxury resort he was desperate to impress. I own it. $3.1 million. Bought it with cash, but that is just one property. See, while Brandon was busy explaining to everyone how poor I am, I was quietly sitting on a $3.5 million real estate empire. Want to see what happens when people find out the broke janitor actually owns their dream destination? Stick around. Let me start from the beginning so you understand how we got here. My husband Leonard died 4 years ago. Cancer. We had been married 34 years and losing him nearly broke me. Brianna was all I had left. And when she met Brandon 2 years ago, I thought maybe our family could heal. Brandon came from money. His father owned 3 car dealerships until 2020, when the market crashed and took their fortune with it, but he still carried himself like royalty. Designer clothes, expensive car, the works. When Brianna proposed last March, I offered to pay for the wedding. Not because I had to, because I wanted to. Brianna is a high school science teacher, making $45,000 a year. Brandon works marketing for some boutique firm. Together they could not afford the kind of wedding Brandon dreamed about. "Mom, you do not have to do this," Brianna said when I handed her the cashier's check. Check number 5138762 from First National Bank, $92,000 written in my careful handwriting. "It is what your father would have wanted," I told her, and it was true. Brandon's reaction was different. He looked at the check like it was contaminated. "Where did you get this kind of money?" he asked. "I have been saving," I said simply. He exchanged a look with Brianna. That look said everything. How does a janitor save $92,000? I drive a 2019 Toyota Tacoma with 156,000 miles on it. I live in the same 1,300-square-foot ranch house I bought in 1999 for $195,000. I wear Carhartt work jackets and Timberland boots that I replace every 4 years, whether they need it or not. To someone like Brandon, I looked exactly like what I was supposed to look like, a working woman who had scraped together every penny for her daughter's happiness. The truth was more complicated. After Leonard's funeral, I got a $4.3 million life insurance payout. But that was not my real money. That was not why I could write a $92,000 check like it was grocery money. For 25 years, while I fixed broken toilets and mopped cafeteria floors, I had been buying rental properties. Started with a duplex in 2000. Used the rental income to buy another, then another. By the time Brandon came into our lives, I owned 17 properties scattered across 3 counties, not mansions, working-class rentals. 2-bedroom homes for young families, small apartments for college students, a few commercial spaces downtown. Nothing flashy, everything practical. The properties generated about $31,000 a month in rental income. After taxes and maintenance, I cleared about $22,000 every month for 15 years. I did not live like a millionaire because I was not trying to impress anyone. I lived like a janitor because I was a janitor. A janitor who happened to own $3.5 million in real estate. But Brandon did not know any of this. To him, I was the embarrassing blue-collar mother-in-law who somehow had wedding money. The wedding planning started in April. Brandon took charge immediately. "Denise, we appreciate your contribution," he would say, always using my first name instead of Mom. "But Brianna and I will handle the actual decisions." I did not mind. I wanted them to have their dream wedding. But the comments started early. At the venue walkthrough, the wedding coordinator mentioned the budget. "92,000 is quite generous," she said to me. "You must be very proud." Brandon laughed. "Oh, Denise has been saving her pennies for years. Have not you, Denise?" The wedding coordinator looked confused. Brandon kept talking. "She is the maintenance supervisor at the elementary school. You know how those government jobs have good retirement plans. I was not retired. I was 63 and still worked every day because I loved helping those kids." But Brandon painted me as some charity case who had emptied her retirement account for his wedding. At the caterer's office, it happened again. "The mother of the bride is covering the full amount," Brandon announced. "She has been planning this for decades, apparently." He made it sound like I had been hoarding money in coffee cans. During the cake tasting, the baker asked about our budget. "Well, Denise here managed to scrape together enough for a decent cake," Brandon said, patting my shoulder like I was a dog. "We are grateful she could make it work." Brianna did not say anything. She looked uncomfortable, but she did not defend me. That should have been my first warning. That night, I sat in my kitchen thinking about Leonard. We had bought that first duplex together. His idea, actually. Leonard had been a civil engineer making $58,000 a year. Nothing fancy, but he understood numbers. "Denise," he had said, "we can either spend our whole lives working for money, or we can make money work for us." That duplex cost us $140,000. We scraped together the down payment, lived frugally for 5 years while the rental income covered the mortgage. Then we bought another, then another. Leonard handled the numbers, I handled the maintenance. We were a team. When he got sick, we had 12 properties generating income. Enough to pay for treatments insurance would not cover. Enough to give him comfort in his final months. Leonard died knowing we had built something that would last. Now Brandon was treating that legacy like it was charity. Like I was some desperate old woman who had sacrificed everything for a wedding I could not afford. The truth was, the $92,000 barely touched my net worth, but Brandon did not know that, and I was starting to think he did not deserve to know. The dress shopping trip was the worst. Brandon insisted I come along, said he wanted both mothers there. His mother had lost most of her money when the dealerships failed, but she still dressed the part. Expensive suit. Designer handbag. The works. "This is Brianna's mother," Brandon told the boutique owner. "Denise has been so generous with the wedding fund." The woman smiled politely. "How wonderful. What do you do, Denise?" "I work at the elementary school," I said. "She is the janitor," Brandon corrected. "Been there forever. Very dedicated to her mop and bucket." He laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. The boutique owner's smile got tighter. Brandon's mother looked at her shoes. I excused myself and went to sit in the waiting area. Through the dressing room curtain, I could hear Brandon talking. "My mother-in-law is very sweet, really salt-of-the-earth type, works hard for every penny." That night, I called my sister-in-law Ruth. She had been Leonard's maid of honor 34 years ago, and she knew about my properties. She had been a bank president for 20 years before retiring. "He is testing you," Ruth said, "seeing how much disrespect you will take." "Maybe I should tell them," I said. "Tell them what?" "That you are not actually poor? That will go over well." Ruth was right. If I revealed my wealth now, it would look like I had been lying, or worse, like I was trying to show off, so I stayed quiet. But Brandon's comments were getting bolder. By June, Brandon's attitude had shifted from condescending to openly dismissive. He started posting about the wedding on social media, pictures of the venue, the flowers, always with captions about how grateful he was for family sacrifices and blue-collar generosity. One post showed the engagement ring he had bought Brianna, a Tiffany solitaire that cost him $13,000. "Thanks to my mother-in-law emptying her savings account so we can have our dream wedding," the caption read. #grateful, #family, #blessed. The comments were predictable. "So sweet that she spent her retirement money on you." Janitors do not make much. She must really love you. Hope she has enough left for her own expenses. Each comment was a small knife. Brandon hearted every single one. But the real problem was not the social media humiliation. It was what I was losing in the process. At the school, word had spread about the wedding fund. Dr. Mitchell, the principal, pulled me aside after a faculty meeting. "Denise, I heard about your generous gift to Brianna. That is incredibly selfless." "It is what mothers do," I said. "Still, $92,000 is a lot of money on a maintenance supervisor's salary. I hope you are not putting yourself in a difficult position." He meant well, but I could see the concern in his eyes. The same concern I started seeing everywhere. The hardware store owner where I bought supplies stopped charging me full price. "Family discount," he would say, winking. I heard about the wedding fund. My barber started refusing tips. "Keep your money, Denise. You have got enough expenses." At church, people looked at me with a mixture of admiration and pity. The woman who had given everything for her daughter's happiness. I was becoming a charity case in my own community. But the worst part was Brianna's reaction when I tried to talk to her about Brandon's behavior. "Mom, he does not mean anything by it," she said. "That is just how he talks. He introduced you as just a janitor to his college friends. You are a janitor, Mom. There is nothing wrong with that." She was missing the point. I was not ashamed of my work. I was tired of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. "Your father would not have tolerated this," I said. Brianna's face hardened. "Do not bring Dad into this. Brandon is not Dad, and he does not have to act like Dad." That stung because she was right. Brandon was not Leonard. Leonard had married a woman with nothing and built a life with her. Brandon was marrying my daughter and expecting someone else to pay for his lifestyle. In July, Brandon's parents invited us to dinner at their house. Even after losing their money, they lived in a 4,400 square foot colonial in the expensive part of town. The mortgage payments had to be killing them, but they kept up appearances. "Denise, we cannot thank you enough for your generosity," Brandon's mother said over dinner. "It must be such a sacrifice." "No sacrifice," I said. "I wanted to do it." Brandon's father leaned forward. "Still, $92,000 is serious money for someone in your position. We appreciate you stretching your budget." "I am not stretching anything," I said quietly. Brandon laughed. "Mom, do not be modest. You have been saving for this your whole life." That was it. The assumption that I had spent my entire working life accumulating just enough money to pay for one wedding, that everything I had ever earned had led to this one moment of blue-collar generosity. After dinner, Brandon cornered me in the kitchen. "Denise, I need you to understand something," he said. "This wedding reflects on all of us. I need you to present well." "What does that mean?" "It means maybe do not mention the janitorial thing to everyone you meet. Maybe let people assume you do something more, professional." I stared at him. "You want me to lie about my job?" "I want you to be strategic, for Brianna's sake." That night I drove home in my old pickup truck thinking about stakes. What was I really losing here? Money? No. The $92,000 barely dented my net worth. Respect? Definitely, but from people whose respect I had never needed before. The real loss was something deeper. I was losing my sense of self, becoming someone I did not recognize, a grateful charity case instead of a woman who had worked hard and built something quietly successful. Something had to change, but I still hoped Brandon would come to his senses before the wedding. I was wrong. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the truck for a long moment. The house looked the same as it had for 25 years. Same modest ranch, same simple life. But inside that house were file cabinets full of property deeds, bank statements showing monthly deposits of $31,000, tax returns that would make Brandon's jaw drop. I thought about Leonard, about the duplex we bought together, about his dream of building something that would last. What would Leonard do? I wondered. Then I remembered. Leonard never let anyone disrespect his wife. Not once in 34 years. It was time I stopped letting Brandon disrespect me. The breaking point came during the final tasting at Riverside Manor in August. The venue was everything Brandon had dreamed of. Mahogany reception hall, crystal chandeliers, gardens overlooking the river. $16,500 just for the rental, not counting catering, flowers, or the orchestra he had insisted on. We were meeting with the wedding coordinator, going over last-minute details. Brandon had brought his best man, a lawyer named Jennifer, who had known Brandon since college. Brianna was there looking uncomfortable in her one good suit. Now about the final payment, the coordinator said. We will need the remaining $27,000 2 weeks before the wedding. No problem, I said. I can write you a check today if that is easier. The coordinator smiled. Wonderful. You must be very proud of your daughter. I am, I said. That is when Brandon decided to perform. Oh, Denise has been planning this for years, he announced to the room. She has been saving every penny of her janitor salary. It is really quite touching. Jennifer, the best man, looked at me with what I can only describe as pity. How noble, he said. It is rare to see such sacrifice these days. It is not a sacrifice, I said quietly. Brandon laughed. Mom, do not be modest. Everyone knows maintenance workers do not make much. You have probably been eating beans and rice for months to make this happen. The coordinator looked uncomfortable. Brianna stared at her shoes. I decided to try one more time to have an honest conversation. Brandon, can I speak with you privately? We stepped into the hallway. I kept my voice calm. I need you to stop describing my contribution as charity. I am not doing that. You just told strangers I have been eating beans and rice to afford your wedding. He crossed his arms. Denise, I am grateful for what you have done, but let's be realistic about what it represents. What does it represent? A working woman's life savings. Your big gesture. The most money you will ever spend on anything. I took a deep breath. What if I told you it was not my life savings? What do you mean? What if I told you that $92,000 was just money I had available? That it did not require any sacrifice at all? Brandon's expression shifted from confusion to something harder. Denise, I have seen your house. I have seen your truck. I know what a janitor makes. Do not try to make this into something it is not. I am not trying to make it into anything. I am trying to tell you the truth. The truth is, you are a maintenance worker who saved up for your daughter's wedding. There is no shame in that. But do not pretend you are something you are not. His voice had gotten louder. Through the doorway, I could see the coordinator and Jennifer pretending not to listen. I am not pretending anything, I said. But I am also not a charity case. Brandon's laugh was sharp. Denise, look around. This venue costs more than you make in a year. The flowers cost more than your truck payment. You are out of your league here, and that is okay. But do not act like you belong. Do not act like I belong. You know what I mean. This is a different world from mopping floors and unclogging toilets. Just stay in your lane. Stay in your lane. Those 4 words hit me like a physical blow. I walked back into the reception hall. Brianna looked up hopefully. Everything okay, Mom? Fine, I said. But it was not fine. Brandon had just told me I did not belong at my own daughter's wedding, that my contribution was appreciated, but my presence was tolerated. The coordinator finished her presentation. We discussed table arrangements, music timing, the photographer's schedule. Brandon dominated the conversation, making decisions with the confidence of someone spending other people's money. As we prepared to leave, I made one last attempt at dignity. Brandon, I would like to give a toast at the reception. Something short about Brianna and family. He exchanged a look with Jennifer. Actually, Denise, we have already planned the toasts. Brianna's maid of honor, my best man, my father. We are trying to keep things streamlined. A mother's toast is traditional. Your toast would be sweet, I am sure, but maybe not the right tone for our guests. Not the right tone because a janitor's words would not match the crystal chandeliers and $12 glasses of wine. Brianna finally spoke up. "Brandon, maybe Mom could. Brianna, trust me on this. I know our crowd. Our crowd. Not my crowd. Not family. His crowd. I drove home that night thinking about lanes. Brandon wanted me to stay in mine. The problem was, he had no idea which lane was actually mine, but he was about to find out. The next morning, I sat in my kitchen with my cell phone and a cup of coffee, looking at a list of numbers I rarely called during daylight hours. Most people do not realize how much business gets done before 7 in the morning. Property managers, contractors, maintenance crews, they all start early. When you own 17 rental properties, you learn to work around everyone else's schedule. My first call was to Patricia Anderson, who managed my commercial properties downtown. "Denise, early morning for you. Everything okay?" "Fine, Patty. Question for you. That new restaurant space on Main Street. We still getting $16.50 a month for that?" $17.50 as of July. "Why?" "Just checking. Also, I may need some documentation pulled together. Property values. Rental income. The works. Nothing urgent. But maybe have it ready." "Sure thing. Business loan application? Something like that?" "Something like that." My second call was to Ruth, who was already up reading the newspaper. "You sound different," she said after I explained yesterday's conversation. "Different how? Like you have made a decision." She was right. I had made a decision. I was tired of being treated like a grateful poor person when I was not poor, and I was definitely done being grateful for the privilege of being insulted. "What are you thinking?" Ruth asked. "I am thinking Brandon wants me to stay in my lane. I am thinking he should be careful what he wishes for." Ruth chuckled. "Leonard would have handled this months ago. Leonard never had to deal with Brandon." "No. But he would not have let it get this far. He would have set boundaries." That afternoon, I stopped by the bank to see Tom Wilson, who had handled my accounts for 20 years. Tom's wife had been Leonard's best friend, and he had been at our kitchen table for more dinner parties than I could count. "Denise, good to see you. How is the wedding planning?" "Interesting. Tom, I need a favor. Could you prepare a financial summary? Assets, property values, monthly income, just a simple one-page overview." Tom raised an eyebrow. "Everything okay? Everything is fine. I just need some people to understand my actual financial position." Tom leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully. He had met Brandon at Brianna's birthday party last year. He had seen his reaction when I picked up the dinner check without blinking. "I can have that ready by Friday," Tom said. "One page, clear numbers, everything someone would need to understand your actual position." That evening, Brianna called. Her voice sounded strained. "Mom, Brandon feels bad about yesterday. He did not mean to hurt your feelings." "He did not hurt my feelings. He is just stressed about the wedding. You know how grooms get." I did know how grooms got. Leonard had been stressed before our wedding too, but Leonard's stress had made him more considerate, not less. "Brianna, has Brandon ever asked about my finances?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, has he ever wondered how a janitor saves $92,000? Long pause. "Mom, are you okay? You have been acting strange lately." "I am fine." "Answer the question. He assumes you have been saving for a long time. Maybe had some help from Dad's life insurance." "What if I told you the $92,000 was not from life insurance or savings? What if I told you it was just available money?" "Mom, I do not understand what you are getting at." "I am getting at the fact that your husband thinks he knows everything about my financial situation, but he has never actually asked." "Why would he ask? It is none of his business." That stopped me. She was right. It was not Brandon's business how much money I had or where it came from, but it became his business when he started publicly describing my contribution as a pathetic sacrifice. "Brianna, do you know how much money I make?" "I know you do okay. You paid off the house. You have got good insurance. You seem comfortable." Comfortable. That was the word everyone used. Denise Porter, the comfortable janitor who had stretched her comfort to pay for a wedding. What if I told you comfortable was an understatement? "Mom, what are you trying to say?" I almost told her everything right then, about the properties, the rental income, the fact that $92,000 represented about 6 weeks of revenue for me. Instead, I said, "Nothing, sweetheart, just thinking out loud." But I was not thinking out loud. I was planning. Friday morning, Tom handed me the financial summary, 1 page, bullet points, very clear numbers. Total property value $3.5 million. Monthly rental income $31,000. Net worth after debts and mortgages $2.3 million. I folded the paper and put it in my wallet. The wedding was 3 weeks away. That same afternoon, Patricia called me back. "Denise, I have got everything ready. Property deeds, income statements, market valuations, the whole portfolio. And I included the Azure Bay numbers like you asked. Azure Bay. I had almost forgotten about Azure Bay. 3 years ago, I had bought a struggling resort property 2 hours north of Columbus. 52 rooms, restaurant, conference facilities, the works. The previous owner had over-leveraged and needed to sell quickly. I had paid cash, $3.1 million, spent another $450,000 on renovations. Now it generated almost $550,000 in annual profit during peak season. The place had a 5-star rating on every travel website. "Patty, I might need you to be available in 3 weeks. I may need to verify some information over the phone." "No problem, Denise. Is everything okay?" "Everything is fine. I am just tired of people making assumptions." After I hung up, I sat at my kitchen table looking at property files. 17 rental properties, 1 luxury resort, 25 years of careful planning and smart investments. Leonard and I had built this together. Every duplex, every apartment building, every commercial space. When he got sick, we had enough money that he could choose his treatments instead of being forced into whatever insurance would cover. He died with dignity, with choices. That was what wealth really meant. Not impressing people, not buying expensive things, just having choices when it mattered most. The rehearsal dinner was 2 weeks away. I knew exactly what Brandon would do. He would stand up in front of 88 guests and tell them about the poor janitor who had sacrificed everything. He would describe my contribution as the most money I would ever spend. He would paint me as a charity case who deserved their admiration and pity, unless I stopped him. I called Ruth again. "How are you planning to do this?" she asked. "At the rehearsal dinner?" "No. At the wedding. In front of everyone. 195 guests." Ruth was quiet for a moment. "That is a big audience. It needs to be. Brandon has spent 6 months publicly humiliating me. The correction needs to be equally public." "What about Brianna?" "Brianna will understand eventually. Right now, she is too caught up in Brandon's world to see what he is really doing. And if she does not understand, then she will learn the same lesson Brandon is about to learn, that assumptions can be very expensive." Ruth sighed. "Leonard would be proud of you." "You think so?" "I think Leonard spent 34 years watching you underestimate yourself. He would love to see you finally showing people who you really are." That night, I pulled out old photo albums, pictures of Leonard and me standing in front of our first duplex. We looked so young, so hopeful, Leonard had his arm around my shoulders. I had paint in my hair from touching up the trim. We had just signed the papers that morning. "This is the beginning," Leonard had said. "The beginning of what?" I had asked. "The beginning of building something that lasts, something that gives us choices." I traced my finger over his face in the photograph. "We had built it, Leonard. 25 years of work. And now some entitled man-child was treating it like charity. Like I was supposed to be grateful for the privilege of being insulted. Not anymore. The wedding was 2 weeks away. Brandon wanted me to stay in my lane. He was about to learn which lane was actually mine. I spent the next few days making sure everything was in order. Called Patricia 3 more times to confirm documentation. Checked with Tom that the financial summary was accurate and up to date. Made sure Amanda at Azure Bay's front desk knew there might be some questions about the honeymoon reservation. Brandon had booked 6 nights in a premium suite. He had mentioned it constantly. Azure Bay Resort. He would tell anyone who would listen. One of the most exclusive places in Ohio. We are hoping to charm our way into some upgrades. Every time he said it, I smiled and said nothing. Let him dream about charming the staff. Let him imagine impressing the resort managers with his sophistication and wit. He had no idea who actually owned the place. No idea that every upgrade request would come across my desk for approval. No idea that the broke janitor he was so embarrassed by held the deed to his dream honeymoon destination, 2 weeks until the wedding, 14 days until Brandon learned the truth. The rehearsal dinner was held at Brandon's parents' country club, a place where the monthly dues probably exceeded my official salary. Brandon had insisted on a formal dinner, even though Brianna had wanted something casual. 88 people, including his college friends, her teacher colleagues, and both sets of family. I wore my best suit, the one I had bought for Leonard's funeral, navy blue. Nothing fancy, but it fit well and was appropriate for the occasion. Brandon wore a designer tuxedo and his grandfather's cufflinks. He looked handsome, which made what happened next even more painful. The evening started normally. Cocktails, small talk, everyone being polite. I talked to Dr. Mitchell about the new playground equipment the school was installing. I chatted with Brianna's college roommate about her new job in Cincinnati. Then came the toasts. Brandon's father went first, talking about watching his son grow up and how proud he was of the man he had become. Sweet, appropriate, exactly what a father should say. Brianna's maid of honor went next, sharing funny stories about their friendship and making everyone laugh. Then Brandon stood up. "I wanted to say a few words about family," he began, "and about the incredible generosity we have experienced while planning this wedding. I should have known where this was going. Some of you know that Denise, Brianna's mother, has made this entire celebration possible. She has funded our dream wedding out of her own pocket." Polite applause around the room. What makes this even more special is understanding the sacrifice this represents. Denise works as a maintenance supervisor at Lincoln Elementary. She has been there for 25 years, mopping floors and fixing broken things. More applause, but I could feel the energy in the room shifting. People were looking at me with that familiar mixture of admiration and pity. Denise could have used this money for her retirement, or for a new truck, or for any number of things. Instead, she chose to give her daughter the wedding of her dreams. He raised his glass. To blue-collar generosity. To mothers who put their children first. To Denise Porter, who proves that the size of your paycheck does not determine the size of your heart. The room erupted in applause. People were smiling at me, nodding approvingly. Dr. Mitchell gave me a thumbs up. Brianna looked emotional, but I felt humiliated. Brandon had just announced to 88 people that I was a poor janitor who had emptied a savings account for his wedding. He had made me into a charity case in front of my daughter's friends, my colleagues, and his entire social circle. After the applause died down, Brandon's college roommate, a woman named Victoria who worked for some investment firm in New York, leaned over to me. "That was so moving," she said. "It must be wonderful to have something so important to spend your life savings on." "It was not my life savings," I said quietly. She looked confused. "Oh, I thought Brandon said." Brandon assumed. Before Victoria could respond, Brandon's best man, Jennifer, tapped his wine glass for attention. "I would also like to say something about generosity," Jennifer announced. "Working in family law, I see a lot of financial disputes, but I have never seen anything as selfless as what Denise has done." He turned to look at me directly. "Denise, you represent everything that is right about American values. Working hard, living modestly, and sacrificing for family. In a world of people who spend money they do not have on things they do not need, you saved money you did have for something that truly matters." More applause. I felt like I was being buried alive under their praise. Jennifer was not finished. "I did some research because I was curious about the numbers. The median salary for a school maintenance supervisor in Ohio is about $48,000. After taxes, housing, and basic living expenses, saving $92,000 probably took Denise 17 to 22 years of incredibly disciplined budgeting." The room was silent now, hanging on every word. That means Denise started saving for this wedding when Brianna was in middle school, long before she even met Brandon. She was setting aside money for a future son-in-law she had not met yet, for a wedding that was just a distant possibility. People were getting emotional. I saw several women wiping their eyes. "That," Jennifer concluded, "is what unconditional love looks like." The standing ovation lasted almost a minute. I sat there trapped in my chair while 88 people celebrated my imaginary poverty and fictional sacrifice. They were applauding a story that was not true about a woman who did not exist. The worst part was seeing Brianna's face. She was crying, actual tears of pride and gratitude for her mother's incredible sacrifice. After the applause finally stopped, Brandon's mother stood up. "Denise, I know this might be presumptuous, but I would like to help you with something." "Oh no. My husband still has connections in the automotive industry. If you need a more reliable vehicle, something newer and safer, I would be happy to make some calls." A woman who has given so much for her family deserves to drive something dependable. The offer was meant kindly. She was trying to help the poor janitor, who had spent her retirement money on her son's wedding, but it was the final straw. I stood up slowly, and the room went quiet. "Thank you," I said. "That is very kind. But I am comfortable with my current situation." Brandon's mother smiled. "Of course you are. You are a very dignified woman. But dignity does not pay for car repairs." She meant well. They all meant well. But they were offering charity to a woman who owned more property than most of them would accumulate in their lifetimes. I looked around the room at all the concerned, sympathetic faces. These people had just spent 10 minutes celebrating my poverty and planning my financial rescue. Tomorrow was the wedding. In front of 195 guests, Brandon was going to continue this performance. He was going to present me as the grateful poor mother who had given everything for her daughter's happiness, unless I stopped him. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Patricia's number. "Excuse me," I said to the table. "I need to make a quick business call." I stepped outside onto the country club's terrace, where the evening air was cooler and I could think clearly. Patricia answered on the second ring. "Denise, it is kind of late for a business call." "I know. I need a favor, and it is important." "Sure. What is up?" "Tomorrow is my daughter's wedding. There is going to be a situation where I need people to understand my actual financial position. Can you put together a portfolio summary? Something official looking that shows property values, rental income, the works, of course. How official are we talking? Official enough that it would impress lawyers and investment professionals." Patricia had been managing properties for 20 years. She understood immediately. Someone has been underestimating you. Something like that. I can have everything ready by morning. Property deeds, income statements, market valuations. Want me to include the Azure Bay numbers? Yes, I said. Include Azure Bay, the whole portfolio, everything. And Patty, I might need you to be available tomorrow afternoon. I may need to verify some information over the phone. No problem, Denise. Is everything okay? Everything is fine. I am just tired of people making assumptions. After I hung up, I called Ruth. How did it go tonight? She asked. I told her about the toasts, the standing ovation, the offer of automotive charity. Good Lord, Ruth said. They actually researched your salary. Jennifer is a lawyer. He probably thinks he is being helpful. What are you going to do? I am going to let Brandon have his moment tomorrow. Let him introduce me however he wants. But I am also going to make sure the truth comes out. How? Brandon has been bragging about their honeymoon. 6 nights at Azure Bay Resort, premium suite, spa treatments, the works. Ruth was quiet for a moment, then she laughed. Oh, Denise, you do not mean. Azure Bay Resort, 52 rooms, $3.1 million property, fully renovated. 5-star rating on TripAdvisor, and you own it. I own it. Ruth was still laughing. He is going to honeymoon at a resort owned by the poor janitor. He is going to try to. But there might be some complications with their reservation. We talked for another few minutes, working out the details. Ruth would be at the wedding tomorrow, sitting with the family. She knew everyone involved and, more importantly, everyone knew and respected her. When the moment came, her word would carry weight. I went back inside to find Brianna looking for me. Mom, where did you go? People wanted to talk to you. Just needed some air. Mom, I want you to know what Brandon said tonight, what Jennifer said. It means everything to me that you did this. My daughter was looking at me with such love and gratitude that I almost told her everything right then. But tomorrow would be better. Tomorrow the truth would come out naturally, in context where everyone could understand what had really been happening. Brianna, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you know where you are going on your honeymoon? Azure Bay Resort. Brandon found it online. Said it was perfect. 5-star reviews. Beautiful location. We are staying in one of their premium suites. Sounds expensive. It is. Brandon used our credit card for the deposit, but he is hoping to charm them into some upgrades once we get there. You know how he is with people. I knew exactly how he was with people. The rest of the evening passed quietly. People kept approaching me with compliments about my generosity and questions about my retirement plans. I answered politely, but my mind was on tomorrow. I drove home in my old truck, thinking about lanes again. Brandon had told me to stay in mine. Tomorrow he would find out which lane was actually mine. I spent an hour that night looking through property files, making sure I had everything I might need. Property deeds, income statements, tax returns, banking records. 25 years of careful documentation. Before bed, I made one final call to Azure Bay's front desk. Azure Bay Resort. This is Amanda. How can I help you? Amanda, this is Denise Porter. I need to speak with your manager about a reservation. Of course, Miss Porter. Is this about the Hayes party checking in next week? It is. There may be some questions about their status. I want to make sure everyone is prepared. Understood. I will make sure the manager is available. I hung up and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. Same face I had had for 63 years. Same worn work clothes hanging on the bedroom chair. Same modest house around me. But tomorrow people were going to see the rest of the picture. Tomorrow Brandon was going to learn that staying in your lane only works if you know whose lane you are in. The wedding ceremony was beautiful. Brianna looked stunning in her $3,800 dress. Brandon looked handsome in his rented tuxedo. The flowers were perfect, the music was elegant. and the weather cooperated with clear skies and gentle breezes. For 2 hours, I forgot about everything else and just enjoyed watching my daughter get married. The problem started at the reception. Brandon had arranged the seating carefully. Head table for the wedding party, family tables near the front. Friends and colleagues scattered throughout the mahogany-paneled reception hall at Riverside Manor. I was seated at the family table with Ruth, Brianna's Uncle Mike, and Brandon's grandparents. A respectable position, but not the head table. Brandon had explained that space was limited, and they wanted to keep the head table small. What he really wanted was to control the narrative without my inconvenient presence nearby. The first hour went smoothly. Cocktails, appetizers, small talk about how beautiful everything looked. People kept complimenting the venue, the flowers, the orchestra Brandon had insisted on hiring. "This must have cost a fortune," I heard someone say. "Denise paid for all of it," someone else replied. "The mother of the bride. She has been saving for years." Then came the formal introductions. Brandon stood at the microphone, radiant in his tuxedo, ready to present his new family to the assembled guests. "Ladies and gentlemen, I would like you to meet the woman who made this entire celebration possible. Brianna's mother has worked as a maintenance supervisor at Lincoln Elementary School for 25 years. Through discipline, sacrifice, and unconditional love, she saved enough money to give us the wedding of our dreams." He gestured toward me. "Please join me in thanking Denise Porter, who proves that the most generous hearts often come in the most humble packages." The applause was thunderous. 195 people stood and clapped for the poor janitor's incredible sacrifice. I remained seated. Brandon continued, his voice carrying easily across the room. "Denise represents everything beautiful about working-class values. While other people our age are focused on luxury cars and expensive vacations, Denise chose to live modestly so she could give her family something special." More applause. I could see people wiping their eyes. "Denise drives a 20-year-old truck and lives in the same small house she has owned forever because her priorities are not about impressing people, they are about loving people." He was not wrong about my priorities, but he was wrong about everything else. So tonight, as we celebrate in this beautiful venue, eating this incredible food, dancing to this amazing music, let us remember that it is all possible because one woman chose family over fortune, love over luxury. The standing ovation lasted almost 2 minutes. When it finally ended, Brandon held up his hand for quiet. "And now, I have a special announcement. Brianna and I are honeymooning at Azure Bay Resort, one of the most exclusive destinations in Ohio. 6 nights in their premium suite." He beamed at the crowd. "We are hoping to charm our way into some upgrades once we arrive. You know how it is with these fancy places. Sometimes a smile and a kind word can work wonders." I stood up slowly and pulled out my phone. "Brandon," I called out, my voice carrying clearly across the quiet room. "Actually, you might want to call Azure Bay before you leave tomorrow." She looked confused. "Why? There might be some issues with your reservation." The room was completely silent now, 195 people watching this exchange. "What kind of issues?" Brandon asked. I scrolled through my contacts and found Patricia's number. "Let me call the property manager. She can explain better than I can." I dialed Patricia's number and put the phone on speaker. "Denise Porter Properties. This is Patricia." A few people at nearby tables leaned forward. "Denise Porter Properties. Patty, I am at my daughter's wedding reception. I have got you on speaker. Can you tell everyone about the Azure Bay situation?" "Of course. Are you referring to the Hayes honeymoon reservation?" "That is right." Patricia's voice was clear and professional. "Well, we have been reviewing the booking, and there are some questions about payment authorization. The reservation was made with a credit card, but given the premium suite upgrade requests, we need to verify the guest relationship to the property owner." Brandon's face had gone pale. "Property owner?" "Yes," Patricia continued. "Azure Bay Resort is privately owned. The owner prefers to approve all premium accommodations personally. Who is the owner? Brandon asked, though I could see in his expression that he was beginning to understand. Denise Porter. She purchased the property 3 years ago, 52 rooms, full-service spa, conference facilities, beautiful place. Miss Porter has invested quite a bit in renovations. The reception hall was dead silent. Brandon stared at me. You own Azure Bay Resort? I do, but you are a janitor. I am also a property investor. I own 17 rental properties across 3 counties, plus Azure Bay. Ruth stood up from our table, her voice carrying the authority of a former bank president. For those who might be wondering about the numbers, she said, Denise's portfolio is valued at approximately $3.5 million. Her monthly rental income exceeds most people's annual salaries. Dr. Mitchell, my principal, was staring at me with his mouth open. Brandon's best man, Jennifer, who had researched my salary so thoroughly, looked like he had been slapped. But your house, Brandon stammered, your truck, your clothes, are exactly what I need them to be, I said calmly. I live modestly because I choose to, not because I have to. Then why did you not tell us? Because you never asked. You assumed. You researched my official salary, but never wondered about any other income. You decided I was poor and treated me accordingly. The room was buzzing now, people whispering to each other, trying to process this information. Brandon's father stood up at his table. Denise, if this is true, then why did you let us think? I let you think what you wanted to think. Your son introduced me as just a janitor and described my wedding contribution as a pathetic sacrifice. I tried to correct him privately, but he told me to stay in my lane. I looked directly at Brandon. You wanted me in my lane. Well, my lane includes owning the resort where you are planning to spend your honeymoon. Patricia's voice came through the phone speaker again. Miss Porter, should I go ahead and confirm the reservation? The premium suite is available, and given the family connection, I can authorize the upgrade requests. All eyes were on me. This was the moment where I could either be gracious or petty, where I could show real class or sink to Brandon's level. Confirm the reservation, I said. Authorize all upgrades, full spa package, room service, whatever they want. It is a wedding gift. Relief flooded Brandon's face. Then I continued. But I want it clear that this gift comes from a property owner to her daughter and son-in-law, not from a charity case to her social betters. The message was unmistakable. I was still being generous, but I was no longer being grateful for the privilege of being insulted. The reception hall buzzed with conversation as people processed what had just happened. I watched the social dynamics shift in real time. Dr. Mitchell approached our table first. Denise, I had no idea. All these years. You have been the same person I have always been, I said. I fix broken things at the school because I enjoy helping kids. The money was never the point. But $3.5 million? How? Ruth answered for me. 25 years of smart investing. Denise bought her first rental property in 2000 and never stopped learning. She understands real estate better than most professional investors. More people were gathering around our table now. Brandon's college friends, the ones who had looked at me with pity an hour ago, were suddenly very interested in hearing about my investment strategy. Miss Porter, said Victoria, the investment professional from New York, I have to ask, what is your approach to property acquisition? An hour ago she had been explaining my financial limitations to me. Now she wanted investment advice. Buy what you understand, I said simply. I understand working-class neighborhoods, starter homes, properties where regular people want to live. I do not buy mansions or commercial complexes. I buy houses that remind me of the one I grew up in. And the resort? Distressed property. Previous owner overleveraged, needed to sell quickly. I had cash available. $3.1 million in cash after 20 years of rental income. Yes, The conversation continued, but I was watching Brandon across the room. He was standing near the head table, surrounded by his wedding party, but he looked isolated. His best man, Jennifer, kept glancing in my direction with an expression I could not quite read. Brianna appeared at my elbow. "Mom, we need to talk." We stepped out onto the venue's terrace, the same spot where I had made my phone calls the night before. "Why did you not tell me?" she asked. "Tell you what? That you are rich, Mom, that you own all these properties, that you did not actually sacrifice anything for the wedding." "I sacrificed plenty for this wedding, just not money." Brianna was quiet for a moment, looking out over the river. "I do not understand why you kept it secret." "I did not keep it secret. I just did not announce it. And there is a difference, but you let people think. I let people think whatever they wanted to think. Your husband decided I was a poor janitor who had scraped together wedding money. He never asked about my finances, he just assumed. He is embarrassed, Mom. He should be embarrassed. He spent 6 months publicly describing my generosity as pathetic charity. He told his friends I had been eating beans and rice to afford your wedding." Brianna leaned against the terrace railing. "So this was all, what? Some kind of lesson?" This was me finally getting tired of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. We stood in silence for several minutes. Inside, I could hear the band playing, people laughing. The normal sounds of a wedding reception. "What happens now?" Brianna asked. "Now you go enjoy your wedding. Tomorrow you go on your honeymoon to a very nice resort that I happen to own. After that, we figure out how to be a family that treats each other with respect." "And Brandon?" "Brandon learns that assumptions can be expensive." We went back inside to find the reception in full swing, but the energy had changed. People were still celebrating, but there were undercurrents of conversation that had not been there before. I overheard fragments as I moved through the room. Never would have guessed. Been sitting on millions this whole time. Makes you wonder what else we do not know. At the bar, Brandon's father cornered me. "Denise, I owe you an apology. We made assumptions about your financial situation. You made the assumptions your son encouraged you to make." He winced. "Brandon has been through a lot since we lost our money. Sometimes he overcompensates by treating other people like charity cases. He did not mean it that way. He meant it exactly that way. He told me I did not belong in his social circle. He said I should stay in my lane." Brandon's father looked uncomfortable. "What can we do to make this right? Treat people based on their character, not their bank statements." Around 9 o'clock, Brandon finally approached me. He looked shaken. "Denise, I need to apologize." "You do. I made assumptions. I was wrong. You were wrong about more than assumptions. You were wrong about how you treat people." His eyes filled with tears. "I never meant to hurt you. But you did hurt me. For 6 months you described my contribution to your wedding as a pathetic sacrifice by a poor old woman. You made me into a charity case in front of my friends, my colleagues, my community. I did not know. You did not want to know. You saw what you expected to see and never looked deeper. How can I fix this?" I looked at my new son-in-law standing there in his expensive tuxedo, finally understanding that the world was not quite what he had thought it was. You can start by treating people with respect regardless of what you think they are worth. You can stop making assumptions about other people's lives. And you can remember that generosity does not require poverty. Will you forgive me? That was the question I had been dreading, because forgiveness meant letting go of my anger, and I was not quite ready to do that yet. "I will work on it," I said finally. "But Brandon, this cannot happen again. I will not be anyone's charity case, and I will not be grateful for the privilege of being insulted." He nodded, tears streaming down his face. "Now go dance with your wife. It is your wedding day." As the evening wound down, people continued approaching me with apologies, explanations, and sudden interest in my investment portfolio. But the conversation I remembered most was with Ruth as we prepared to leave. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Lighter," I said. "Like I can finally breathe." Leonard would have been proud. Leonard would have handled this 6 months ago. Ruth laughed. Maybe. But he also would have told you that everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes. Looking across the room at Brandon and Brianna dancing their last dance as newlyweds, I realized Ruth was probably right. 3 weeks later, Brandon and Brianna returned from their honeymoon. They had had a wonderful time at Azure Bay Resort. The premium suite had exceeded their expectations. The spa treatments were world-class, and the staff had treated them like royalty, which in a way they were. Brianna called me the day after they got back. "Mom, we need to have dinner, all 3 of us." We met at a quiet restaurant downtown. Nothing fancy. I arrived first, followed by Brianna and Brandon. He looked different somehow, more subdued, less performative. "How was the honeymoon?" I asked. "Incredible," Brianna said. "Mom, that resort is amazing. How long have you owned it?" 3 years. "Bought it from a developer who got overextended. The staff kept asking about you. Apparently you are quite hands-on for an owner. I visit every few months, make sure maintenance standards are being met. Check on renovations. Meet with the management team. It is a business, not just an investment." Brandon had been quiet through this exchange. Now he spoke up. "Denise, I need to say something." I waited. "I spent our entire honeymoon thinking about what happened at the wedding, about how I treated you, what I said, the assumptions I made, and I realized I do not just owe you an apology, I owe you my respect. Not because you have money, but because you are a good woman who has been nothing but generous to me, and I repaid that generosity with condescension." He took a breath. "I also realized something else. I have been so focused on what I lost when my family went broke that I forgot how to see what other people have built." This felt different from his wedding night apology, more thoughtful, less desperate. "Brandon, I appreciate that, but I need you to understand something. I am not going to hide my success anymore to make other people comfortable. I am proud of what I have built, and I am proud of the work I do at the school." "I understand. Do you? Because for 6 months you treated my work like something shameful. You acted like being a janitor was embarrassing, like it somehow diminished my contribution to your wedding." Brianna shifted in her seat. "Mom," Brandon did not mean. Let him answer. Brandon met my eyes directly. "You are right. I was embarrassed by your job because I thought it reflected poorly on our family. That was wrong and stupid and classist, and I am ashamed of it." "Why were you embarrassed?" "Because I was afraid my friends would think less of me for marrying into a working-class family, because I still thought status came from job titles instead of character." That was honest, at least. "And now? Now I know that the janitor who fixed the leak at my in-laws' place last month is the same woman who owns the most beautiful resort I have ever stayed at. Now I know that assumptions make you look foolish." We ordered dinner and talked for 2 more hours. Not about money or properties or wedding drama, but about normal family things. Brandon's new job prospects, Brianna's plans for the school year, my thoughts about maybe scaling back my hours at work. As we prepared to leave, Brandon asked one more question. "Denise, will you teach me about real estate investing?" I was surprised. "Why?" "Because I want to understand what you have built. And because Brianna and I need to start building something ourselves instead of just spending money we do not have." That was perhaps the most mature thing I had heard him say. "Are you serious about learning, or are you just trying to make conversation?" "I am serious. I want to understand how you went from a school maintenance worker to a property owner. I want to know how you made those decisions, how you analyzed properties, how you built something sustainable." Over the following months, Brandon proved he was serious. He read the books I recommended, attended property investment seminars, even came with me to look at a duplex I was considering buying. He had good instincts and asked smart questions. More importantly, he treated the process with respect instead of seeing it as some get-rich-quick scheme. Brianna was proud of both of us. Her husband was learning to build wealth instead of just spending it, and her mother was finally sharing the knowledge she had accumulated over 25 years. The three of us developed a new dynamic, not the grateful poor mother and her social climbing son-in-law, but a family of adults who respected each other's contributions and supported each other's goals. I never did tell Brandon about the exact extent of my net worth. That information would come gradually as he proved he could handle it responsibly. But I did tell him something else. Brandon, the most important thing I have learned is that wealth is not about impressing people. It is about having choices. The choice to be generous without sacrifice. The choice to take risks without fear. The choice to stay in your lane or change lanes entirely. He smiled. And the choice to correct people when they tell you to stay in a lane that is not yours. Exactly. If you are watching this, and you have ever been underestimated because of your job, your appearance, or your circumstances, remember this. People's assumptions about you are not facts about you. Stay humble, but do not stay silent when humility becomes humiliation. Sometimes the quietest people hold the biggest surprises. I am Denise Porter, 63 years old, been fixing toilets and mopping floors for 25 years. And I own a $3.5 million real estate empire that nobody saw coming. Never underestimate the woman who works while others sleep. Never assume you know someone's story based on what they wear or where they work. And never, ever tell someone to stay in their lane unless you are absolutely certain which lane is theirs. Because you might just find out that the broke janitor owns your dream honeymoon destination, and that is a lesson worth $92,000. That is Denise's story. Now I want to hear from you. Where are you watching this from? What city? What country? Drop it in the comments below. I love seeing our global community. Real question. If you were Denise, what would you have done differently? Told Brandon the truth from day one? Walked away from the wedding entirely? Or exposed him exactly like Denise did at the reception? Tell me in the comments. Hit that like button if this story hit different. Share it if you know someone who has ever been underestimated because of their job, their appearance, or their circumstances. And subscribe for more raw, real stories about family, respect, and hidden success. One last thing. Team Denise or Team Brandon? Do you think Denise was right to let him humiliate himself publicly, or should she have corrected him privately before the wedding? Comment below. I read every single one. Thanks for watching. The truth does not need expensive clothes. It just needs patience. See you in the next video.